Hey guys, it's Danny, and for today's 101 ingredient, we're talking brown rice. Now, I have a feeling that most of you are pretty familiar with brown rice. It's a gluten-free whole grain that is rich in fiber, high in nutrients, delicious, and extremely affordable. Now, technically, the term brown rice refers to any rice that's been hulled but not stripped of its outer bran layers. So this would be purple rice, red rice, black rice, and even brown basmati rice. But for the purpose of this video, I am just sticking to your basic everyday short and long grain brown rice. From a nutritional standpoint, there's not really enough difference between the two of them to talk about. But from a culinary perspective, definitely a handful of things worth knowing. For starters, short grain brown rice has a higher starch content than the long grain. So when it cooks up, the kernels are short, fat, plump, and sticky. The texture is a little bit chewy and the flavor is nice and nutty. So it works really well in a brown rice risotto, brown rice sushi, if you wanted to put it in a breakfast porridge, or even in a brown rice pudding. Not to mention, kids really seem to love the short grain because it sticks together, which makes it more fun and easier to eat. The long grain brown rice is longer than it is wide. So when it cooks up, it's thinner and therefore it doesn't stick together and the rice ends up being lighter and fluffier. This type of rice works really well if you wanted to make a rice casserole, if you were making a stir fry, or especially if you're making a rice pilaf. Brown rice is harvested in the fall, but you'll find it at the grocery store all year round, and you'll see it right next to the white rice. If you're at one of the bigger grocery stores, sometimes you can even find it in the bulk bins, and that's great because it'll save you a few bucks. Now, one thing you want to make sure of is that you check the expiration date because brown rice does contain natural oils that can turn. And once they turn, they go rancid, so you don't want to mess with them. If you're buying your rice from a bulk bin, just give it a smell. You will always be able to smell when an oil goes bad. So if it smells bad, leave it at the store. When you get your brown rice home, you can either store it in an airtight container or leave it right in the bag or the box that it came in and keep it in a cool, dry place like the cabinet. Now, if you live in a hot climate or if it's the dead of summer, you're gonna wanna pop it in the fridge. This, again, is just to protect those natural oils. When it comes to cooking your rice, you're gonna use a 2-to-1 ratio for the short grain and a 2.5-to-1 ratio for the long grain. So that's 2 or 2.5 cups of water per 1 cup of rice. I've got short grain here today, so I'm using 2 cups of short grain brown rice because I like to make a little bit extra, along with 4 cups of water and a pinch of salt. All into my pot. Then I'm gonna turn the heat up to high, let it come to a boil. Once you got that boil, you can reduce your heat down to a low so you've got a nice simmer and pop on the lid. Then you're gonna let it cook for about 30 minutes. Now, it's not an exact science, but I find 30 minutes to be the sweet spot. If your rice is done cooking and it seems a little dry, just add some more water. Or if it's done cooking and it seems a little soupy, just drain it the way you would drain pasta. Now, I know a lot of people rinse their rice before cooking it, but that's just something I never got into the habit of unless I buy my rice from a bulk bin. Then I will give it a rinse under some cold water just to wash it off a bit. But apparently, if you rinse your rice several times before cooking it, even soak it a little bit, you'll end up with a super light, super fluffy final product. Now, fluffy rice isn't really my thing, but if that's what you're into, I definitely suggest giving that a try. And just as a side note here, guys, I also keep the 10-minute boil in a bag brown rice in my cabinet for those times when I'm just not prepared or thinking ahead of time. All it is parboiled brown rice, which means it's just cooked a little bit before it's boxed so that when you get it, the cooking time is less. But it's still brown rice, it's still super nutritious, and in my book, still a thumbs up. Now, you're gonna know that your rice is done once all the water has absorbed and the kernels are nice and tender with a little bite to them. Once you're there, go ahead and give it a fluff, and that's ready to roll. Now, for every 1 cup of rice that you use, you're gonna get 3 cups of cooked rice. So I always like to make a little bit extra. This way I can keep it in the fridge or the freezer as a head start ingredient. Once the rice has cooled down a bit, you can just pop it right into an airtight container, put the lid on, and stick it in the fridge. It'll last up to a week. Or you could even freeze your brown rice. And if you check back next week, I'm gonna share a video on how I like to do that. Once you've got your rice ready to roll, you literally can do 101 different things with it. Try adding it into a soup, sprinkling it on top of your salad, stirring it into your eggs. You can make a stir fry, a casserole, or even a dessert. Honestly, the options are endless. So get creative and have some fun. For more simple and nutritious recipes, tips, and ideas, be sure to check out cleananddelicious.com. I'm Danny Spees, and I'll see you next time with another Ingredient 101. And it works beautifully in dishes like brown rice risotto, sushi, a breakfast porridge, or even a breakfast porridge, or even a brown rice pudding.
You said that.